3.
Hey everybody, 3 wins in a row now for the Arsenal. Welcome to the match review of Arsenal's Premier League victory against Norwich City overnight. Of course, it was an early start, 3 o'clock in the morning a few hours ago, with Arsenal winning by 4-0 against Norwich and making that 3 straight. Fantastic performance from all of the boys. Mikel Arteta will be absolutely over the moon with that performance. It was a performance where, if you break it down, the first half an hour was magnificent. Arsenal came out of the blocks very, very quickly. There was a little period in there where Norwich looked like if they got a goal, it could have derailed us quite easily, because we were strong early on and we had a lot of chances, but in terms of actually getting the ball in the back of the net, it wasn't until that unfortunate goalkeeping error which led to Aubameyang netting his first goal and putting the ball in the back of the net that sort of rested our nerves, eased us a little bit, and then after that, Granit Xhaka's second came soon after, and the game was to bed effectively after that. But there was a little period with Norwich in there where they could have caused us some grief, and it's one of those games where if you don't get that early ascendancy to count, then what happens is you're stuck in a position where you're sitting and waiting for a goal to come, but then you get a little bit more nervous at the back as well. So let's do a review of the game and base it on the positives and the questions. Now, I'm not going to use the word negative anymore. There's a reason behind this. I used to get very, very negative when it come to Arsenal a lot of the time, and results weren't going our way over the last 5 to 10 years. A lot of that was growing up through a very successful era and also coming up through the mid-90s and understanding the club. But it was only when my good friend Graham Stubbles sat me down and explained it all to me about what it means to be a fan. Is not so much the day in and day out results. It's about loving a club. It's about being committed to a cause, and more than anything, keeping the faith. And it's about keeping the faith. Right now, we need to keep it. I feel like we've got a long way to go, but this journey back to the top is going to be a good one for us. So let's talk about all of those positives and negatives. We'll have the pros on one side, and then we'll have the questions on the other side. First positive and first pro about everything that went on this morning was our fast start. So the boys came out of the blocks a lot quicker this time around, and if you compare that to the last 4 games in which we've played, of course, those 2 losses that came first under Project Restart, and then the last 2 victories was very slow to start. Today we were fast, we were out of the blocks very, very quickly, passing and moving the ball well. I'm not sure if that Emirates Stadium buzz and being back at home was a big factor for that, but we looked a lot better from the outset. The first 25 minutes was some vintage Arsenal play, and then we could have got a few early goals early on, but it wasn't, as I said, until that Aubameyang goal from that error, fortuitously, that we actually went ahead. And just while I remember, one thing I will say, I did predict a 2-0 victory, and seeing as 2 of the goals this morning were gimmies to Aubameyang, I'm going to stick with that and say I got it right, because we only scored 2 off our own back. But regardless, it doesn't matter how you get them, you have to take them. So the fast start to me was very, very important. That itself flows into number 2, which is the pattern of play. So what we're starting to see now with the boys is a much better pattern of play. I feel like some of his tactics and some of Arteta's ideas are starting to come through now. There's instances where Shaq is starting to come back into his own now. I feel like he's one of our best players of late. He's moving the ball around beautifully. He's passing the ball left and right. And by doing that, he's actually opening up a 360 view to everything, where he's setting up the play for guys around him left and right to actually come in. And from that position, what he's doing is he's actually allowing us to press ahead and score goals. And it's just that sharp play which is absolutely magnificent. So that's been a big positive of mine that I've seen Granit Xhaka, and you can see that when he gets the ball in the middle, he's looking to pass it a lot more quickly. The interplay between Tierney down the left-hand side was magnificent today. He is a huge plus, and that moves on to number 3 in terms of positives. That is Kieran Tierney for me, who has been magnificent, along with Martinez in goal. And overall, our left side this morning looked absolutely magnificent. So Tierney, Martinez, and our entire left side was brilliant this morning. We pushed forward, we looked to create plenty of chances, and it was visually a really, really positive sight for us to see how we were moving. So we can get the right-hand side sorted as well. Of course, there was no Saka in the team this morning, but when he comes back on that left-hand side with Kolasinac as well, it sets us up beautifully. The right-hand side, we get Pepe playing in that false striker role where he can feed the ball off to Hector Bellerin, and we saw Cedric Cedric Suarez debut this morning with a goal as well. Very, very positive for us. So for me, there were some of the big key things to take out of the game. It made me feel really happy this morning. I still feel there's a little bit of work to do in that spinal area in terms of not only coaching, but potentially recruitment. I think we need some reinforcements in centre midfield. Even though Granit Xhaka was brilliant, Dani Ceballos was brilliant as well. You're going to need that depth moving forward as well. Guendouzi, we're not quite sure what the situation with him is at the moment. We saw Arteta'S comments after the game saying that he needs to make an attitude adjustment for him to get himself back in the fold, and nothing has changed. So I'm not sure if there's an issue with some petulance there or whatever the case is, but Guendouzi potentially on the outer. We need some bodies in midfield. So wonder what will happen with transfers, but no point speculating about that just yet. On to the questions that I have, and this is when it comes to the team itself. I just mentioned the spinal side of things. What I want to ask is, why is David Luiz continuing to start? So he's had some calamity moments of late, as we know. And what's happening is that he's continuing to start. He's keeping out Rob Holding, for example, and he's keeping out Socrates, who are both on the bench today. There might be some issues with fitness with Socrates, which I can understand coming back in. However, with David Luiz, he's continuing to start, continuing to get game time. I understand he's a big leader in the dressing room, but for me, Rob Holding is the player that needs to be developed as our future centre-back and potentially a captain. He needs to be playing in a back three, which is what it appears to be sometimes with David Luiz in the team. He has been a very positive player in terms of being a sweeper in a back three. We've seen that at Paris Saint-Germain and very, very effectively at Chelsea as well. However, for the plain defensive outcomes that we need of him, that's where I've been very concerned with him and what he's been doing in terms of his actual play as a defender. There was another calamity moment in the first 10 minutes this morning where he went to clear the ball out of regulation header and can't even get that right. So there's big issues there with David Luiz. My question is, why is he continuing to start? Another question that I have is Mesut Ozil. Where is he and what is going on? We've seen that with him. There's all sorts of problems with his back now. There's the family issue that I mentioned yesterday in the preview, having just had a kid. We're not sure where he is, but at the end of the day, you've got a £350,000 a week talent that's sitting on the bench week after week, not playing, not even in squads. We don't know where he is. That's something that needs to get sorted very soon. I mean, the season is still a month away from ending officially, and how those timings work with player contracts, I don't know, but that's one that we need to have a look at there and work out what's happening with Mesut Ozil. The third one for me, question-wise, is our strikers outside of Aubameyang. So Lacazette, I'm concerned about his confidence as well. He's looking very disappointed when he's being substituted as well, even though he captained the side against Sheffield United in the FA Cup on the weekend. He looked fantastic. I thought he played quite well, but maybe there is a bit of a confidence issue. And the question that comes from this is, where do our goals come from? Where do our goals come from? Aubameyang was going through a little bit of a spell, and because of that, it was great to see him back on the score sheet this morning. 2 gimmies though. We saw Xhaka with a beautiful goal from midfield. We're going to need more output from those guys. And then obviously Suarez, with what effectively was his first major touches in an Arsenal shirt, put the ball away beautifully. But we need to get some more confidence in our front men, and that's going to be, to be seen what happens with our out-and-out strikers, Lacazette, of course, being the key man there. There's some of the questions that I have as well. Aubameyang is another one of the big issues. What's happening with him in general moving forward? But let's not worry. Let's savour in what was a fantastic victory first of all and enjoy it. Coming up to this weekend's game, it is Wolverhampton Wanderers away. We'll do a preview of that this coming Saturday. Big game for the boys. Wolves, of course, pushing for a Champions League place, and they've played very, very well all season. So that'll be a tough game. 2:30 a.m. kickoff Sunday morning for us for that game. I'll be looking forward to it, and I'll see you for a preview on Saturday ahead of our next video tomorrow. Good night.